their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Nothing? No. This does not mean more money for everybody and this and that. Nope.
You sure?
I'm positive.
That's Judd slinging the fastballs at the Billy Guerin press conference yesterday.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Billy Guerin, who, by the way, will be he'll appear on Judd's hockey show today. Correct? In fact, by the time people have listened to me say that, they may have already listened to Billy Guerin on Judd's hockey show. This is Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports entertainment on multiple platforms. Podcast, the Score North YouTube channel, even Score North Radio from 5 to 6 o'clock every single weekday. And right after we got done recording yesterday's show, you guys were right in the middle of a bonus scoop session with Doogie, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose over in St. Paul. And so here's where I'd love to start with you guys now that we've all had basically a day to digest the end of the Parise Suter 9-year era. I mean, it is almost a decade of Parise and Suter's fingerprints all over this organization. The thing that speaks volumes to me, and you heard it in that first clip there from Billy Guerin. So this is how much dead cap the Wild are going to have to eat the next handful of years just to say goodbye to those contracts and those players. Just under $5 million for this upcoming season. This is money they have to eat, and those guys are gone. Like, you're paying those guys to the cap to be gone. Just under $13 million next year. Just under $15 million in each of the 2 years after that. So over the next 4 years, you're going to be paying these guys to the cap. Now, this is the cap, the dead cap you're going to pay. 5, 13, 15, and $15 million. And you asked Billy Guerin, Judd, yesterday. So, all right, so these guys are gone now. Those contracts are kind of gone. So this must mean sign everybody, right? Free agency, trade for Eichel, go sign somebody else. And Billy Guerin's basically saying, no, this actually hurts us financially because we're paying for guys that aren't going to be here to the cap. So what does it say about how badly Bill Guerin just wanted to be done with Parise and Suter for whatever reasons he had to eat this much dead cap money?
In fairness, the question actually was about, does this allow you to go back to Kaprizov and Fiala with different structured deals now because of what you did? And he said no as far as what he's offering them. So this doesn't preclude them from going out and trying to sign guys or trade for guys. So his point, because I thought at first front load a contract to Kaprizov, offer him more, and he'll probably agree to a longer term deal.
But but real quick, this money that they have to eat dead cap eats into the money that they would be able to use on free agents the next 4 years regardless, right?
Actually, what it does immediately for 2021-22 is it frees up $10.3 million though in cap space. So the hit is around 5, but the freed up cap space immediately is actually fairly high. So they're now up to $26.3 million in available cap space for this coming season. So as far as the immediate move goes, this actually cap-wise helps them, where it potentially cripples them unless they draft and develop really, really well. Phil, as you said, is starting in 2022-23. And keep in mind as well, if you're saying, yeah, but but Phil, the cap's going up. I mean, come on, the cap's going up. We don't know that. And right now, there have been reports that the $81.5 million cap, which is what it's currently at, could be flat for as many as 5 years because of the pandemic. So this is where you're going to run into a problem. Let's examine the question that you just threw out, though, because I think it's an interesting one. And the immediate answers are this. And the Parise move is not surprising. Like, everybody knew something had to give there. You couldn't bring him back. After scratching him in the playoffs, the relationship between the team and Zach was done. And Zach, as he reflected on the people that he's talked to so far, actually, I think, felt relief and is very happy now to, well, one, get a very nice parting gift from the Wild, and two, now go out and shop himself. This is what Zach wanted. This is not what Ryan wanted or expected. The Suter move is shocking. But what this does is it frees up immediate cap space. That's important. It gives you, for the expansion draft, which is a week from today on next Wednesday, and the lists have to be in on Saturday. It gives you 2 more players now that you can protect because 2 guys with no move clauses have been eliminated. And then the third point, and the relevant point, the point that Guerin really isn't going to want to talk about too much, is this is it for the room. And you basically you took the nuclear option to the 2 guys who were the most dominant guys in that room and had been for 9 years. And I think Bill Guerin's thinking, right or wrong, was this. Ryan Suter's still a good player because he is. He eats minutes. He is not a bad player. Is he the same player he was 9 years ago? Absolutely not. But he is a very solid top 4 minutes eating defenseman. Those are hard to find. Those are important. Zach Parise, I think, is just about washed. So very different stories here. But Parise is going to be 37 on July 28th. Yep. Suter's going to be 37 in January. And I think Bill Guerin, who's not a dumb guy, and again, I think he thinks that the culture of the room is very important, took one look at how Parise handled his demise, which was, dude, you're a 4th-line player. Now you're not playing. How do you take that? Not well. And he looked at Suter and thought, we're going to go through the same exact thing here eventually with him. And furthermore, when you've cleared out as much of that room as the Wild has, I think he thought to himself, Guerin did, why not clear both these guys out at the same time, even because, as punitive as it's going to be financially, because this is now Bill Guerin's team, and this is now, take your pick, Jared Spurgeon's team, Marcus Foligno's team.
Pominville.
Over to
Healy.
Who's the guy that Teddy? Who's the guy that Bridgewater said this is his team too? It was some obscure
Fusco.
offensive lineman.
Brandon Fusco, right?
He's like, this is his team too, and everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Teddy, what's this like? This is your team now? No, it's not just my team. It's Fusco's team. It's
yeah, it's like, well, no,
Fusco's
Teddy,
like, no, dude, I'm good. It's your team.
Yeah, Teddy, this is your team. But anyway, this is now, I think, the locker room and the chemistry of people that Bill Guerin wanted. And that didn't include Parise, and it didn't include Suter. This is just a very expensive way and potentially harmful way cap-wise to do this.
But isn't that so damning? I mean, think about what you just said. Suter especially, all right? And listen, I'm not going to pretend to have spent 5 seconds in the room with, I'm not Mike Russo. I'm certainly not Judd's hockey show. But over the course of 9 years, we've been around, I've heard enough things. I'll say this about Suter. Suter isn't always Mr. Go along with what leadership, whether it's front office or coaching, is trying to preach and instill vision-wise. Not that he's always been wrong. Sometimes if he has an issue with the organization, maybe he's got a point. But it is really telling that you're willing to essentially say, before this guy falls off a cliff performance-wise, you can make a case for Parise that it was just straight-up performance-based. Man, I think if you loved him behind the scenes, you'd still find a way to maybe keep him around as a 3rd or 4th liner because you're paying, you're going to have to eat money anyways. With Suter, it's even more telling because, like you said, he's not cooked. He's a defenseman. Is he as fast, as nimble as he was 5 years ago? No, probably not. But he's still savvy. He still skates a ton of minutes. He's still mostly durable. And Billy Guerin basically said, yeah, you're not cooked, but I just don't want you here anymore. And I'm willing to take some cap penalties to make sure that you're not in the room anymore. Think about that.
It's incredibly damning.
Yep.
But it's also the right move because Bill Guerin was a captain in this league. He won 2 Stanley Cups as a player. He won 2 Stanley Cups as an executive of the Pittsburgh Penguins, where he saw guys like Sidney Crosby play. And I will say this, from the standpoint of the players themselves, so remove the human aspect, just talking about players. If you go back 9 years, July 4th, 2012, I make that move every day because, yes, 13 years it's ridiculous to the point of it's not even allowed now. $98 million's a ton. Yeah. But this team hadn't made the playoffs for 4 years. This team had become stagnant. This team was, I don't want to say they were falling off the cliff, but the building wasn't as full and the excitement was gone. And those two infused a ton of excitement. And for one day in this godforsaken sports state, we knew what it felt like to be a Yankees fan. For one day, we had you just did what? Oh my God. Now let's shift to the human aspect. The real question here is, would you do it again knowing who they are? And this has nothing to do with what they do on the ice, because both of them, in Parise's prime, he had some star potential to him and worked his ass off. He did to the last day on the ice. Ryan Suter, 8 minutes, incredibly steady, played what at times, and this is a credit to him, looked like an effortless game. But behind the scenes, in the locker room, this never came close to being what they thought, which is these two guys are going to come in. And if you recall, you guys, on the day that they held the press conference shortly after signing on July 4th, the talk was, okay, here's what's going to happen now. The cap's going to go up, which it really didn't as much as we expected. But furthermore, other free agents are going to want to come here and sign to play with these two. Like, these two are going to galvanize this organization. That locker room is going to be a special place because, I mean, hockey, Phil, hockey is definitely one sport where how you mesh personalities together is important, right?
I agree, yeah.
So on that day, they were talking about this going to draw more free agents. It's going to be incredible. I mean, they saw themselves going up to what like the Blackhawks were at the time or were becoming, and that's the thing that fell woefully short. These two guys off the ice never. I mean, Bill Guerin saw what nobody else would address. There's a story that when one of the Wild coaches, after a playoff loss, right before his demise with the team, basically told Suter, "You're uncoachable. Like, you won't listen. You're uncoachable," and that's not inaccurate. And I believe that Suter also, and here's the problem too. So Leopold and Suter became buddies. Big mistake. Owners should not be friends with players. Like, it's fine if they have the whole team like Glenn does for the spaghetti dinner. That's good.
Or if you're Robert Kraft and Tom Brady's 41 and he's been around for 20 years, hey, you guys can get lunch once in a while.
Yeah,
right. But Ryan Suter and Leopold became tight to the point where I was told that when Paul Fenton got hired by the Wild after being the assistant GM in Nashville, it was Ryan Suter who played a big role in that hiring. And like Suter was seen, as Dex can confirm, as the de facto GM of this team for a while.
Yeah.
And all of those things. But you know what? As much as it hurts financially, credit to Bill Guerin for saying, boys, if I'm going to have this job, we're doing it my way. Like, that's what I appreciate.
This was sort of the nuclear option, right? Like, you think, well, maybe they could trade, especially Suter. You would think, like, it's not an ideal contract or age, but you're thinking,
and you have to waive the no move. And I think he had balked at that because his family liked it here, and so. But I mean, I think Bill Guerin,
no choice.
Well, but I mean, in Guerin's defense too, if you look at what he saw from Parise in the playoffs and said, this is what's going to, because the exact same thing. If Suter started to sit, like if Suter started to see a decrease. Because he plays, consistently, Dex? 25 minutes, sometimes 28 per game. If you were to say to him, hey, dude, we got some guys coming along. You're getting older. We're going to get you down to, take your pick, 16 minutes per game. He would have started to go the same direction that Zach did. And I think Bill Guerin said, we just can't have that. And Bill Guerin's right.
Real quick, and I want to clear the way for the other half of Judd's Hockey Show, Declan, to provide some thoughts here. But I just had a thought. If you're Parise or Suter and maybe the job market's not quite what you thought, we got some good news, all right? Our friends at Burnsville Heating and Air are hiring, and they're making it sweet for you. So, and it doesn't matter what level of experience. Listen, if you've played hockey the last 20 years and you really have no experience on a construction site at all whatsoever with HVAC systems, you can be an apprentice. They'll train you on the job.
What if I need immediate cash, Phil?
Well, you can receive up to a $2,000 sign-on bonus, Judd, and that's the good news. It's great. So, and I know it's Burnsville Heating and Air. It's a wonderful company, but they will make sure that you can work within 10 to 20 minutes of wherever you live. You don't necessarily have, if you're like, well, I'm an hour away from Burnsville, it doesn't make sense. Now, they got job sites all over the Twin Cities, especially on the East Metro side, Woodbury, Oakdale, Stillwater, Lake Elmo. So, BurnsvilleHeating.com, click careers. BurnsvilleHeating.com, click careers if you are looking for a full-time job and some decent pay. So, do you think these moves make this team better in 2021-22?
Yes, I think they do. Losing Ryan Suter hurts, and the Wild will have to figure out a way to basically replace those minutes and replace that player. Replacing Suter is definitely more difficult, obviously, than replacing Parise. Parise was a replacement level player this season. And I think the biggest thing with Guerin when he was a player, and he talked about this in February when he was traded towards the end of his career and he got to Pittsburgh. And by the way, Guerin had already been a cup winner, an NHL All-Star. He realized, I'm not the same player I was. I'm not going to be able to probably score 25 goals and be a top-line, top-6 player anymore. I have to accept who I am. And Zach, for whatever reason, has yet to accept the fact that, dude, you're no longer a top-6 player. We have Kevin Fiala playing in front of you. We have Joel Eriksson-Ek playing in front of you. Obviously, Kirill Kaprizov's been phenomenal. We're playing Victor Rask over you, for God's sakes. And I know that's more of a different thing with this position, but Guerin was able to recognize in his own playing career that I have to change the way I play. Zach hasn't figured out to do that yet. But with $26 million in cap space, them still trying to find a center, this team has to get more speed. And I think they're still going to be able to find that speed via the trade route, maybe something in free agency. But with Kaprizov and Fiala on this team, if they remain intact, because there's still no guarantee that Fiala could be traded to get the center you're looking for, you need more of this speed and more of those players. So replacing the defense, that's going to be difficult. I think Ian Cole's now a shoo-in to most likely come back. They have a couple defensive prospects on Kalen Addison and Brennan Manel that can step in, but still they're probably not the same player Ryan Suter is today. But I think this does make the team better going into 2021.
So what this does too is, and this is the interesting part of this dance that I can't wait to see play out. This applies huge immediate pressure because, Phil, what you talked about, when those cap hits come home to roost, and if the cap remains flat, it's going to become a problem. But it's not going to be a problem in 2021-22. And so what this does to me is this means it's go time now. And Bill Guerin's chosen that path. And he mentioned Stanley. He mentioned the Stanley Cup twice yesterday. So, he's not afraid of this. But this puts immediate pressure on, as Deck said, finding a center or two, making the proper moves. And this, to me, is no longer, if it ever was, a conversation about, well, just hold on, because 3 years from now, you got to wait and see the Wild. This signifies you have an immediate window here to improve your team significantly and win right now. And that, again, Suter on the ice probably would have helped that. Their fear was off the ice. He would have hurt it. And they decided that the fear about off the ice outweighed what he could bring on it. But this, they better win. There's when Bill Guerin, who said that he had been talking about this internally for 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months. Congratulations on hiding it. I mean, the Parise thing, no, but Suter, when he talked about going to Craig Leopold and discussing this and saying, he said, when you want to make a move like this, you better have a plan. And me and the hockey operations department have a plan. That plan is not about, in 2024, it's going to be fun. That plan is about winning immediately now, and that's where the pressure resides. I would liken this, guys, to the reverse Cousins. This is the 2018 Vikings in reverse. So instead of bringing a guy in, you're jettisoning two highly paid guys. You're actually going to be penalized for it down the road, but you say being rid of them is going to make us better in many other ways right now.
It's actually what they might wind up doing with Kirk Cousins, because if they get rid of Kirk Cousins for next year, they'd still have to eat like $10 million or something, I want to say, in dead cap money. Here's another layer to throw on this here. Oh no,
what happened?
I think my button bar needs to be reset. Reckless speculation. Okay.
I think Declan's got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Reckless speculation.
So TSN is reporting now, quote, this is Darren Dreger, I believe the Wild are going to make a trade offer on Jack Eichel, but they're also not going to blow their cap space, and they're not going to overpay with trade assets. How can both of those two things be valid? It feels like the team that's going to land Jack Eichel, even with all the potential red flags, is going to wind up having to eventually blow cap space and overpay with trade assets. Do you think the Wild are now legitimate contenders in the trade discussions for Jack Eichel?
I think it makes the path easier. I think it does make the path easier. The thing is if you don't want to trade Boldy or Rossi, your top prospects who are most likely ready to roll in 2021, okay, I can see that because they're going to be under entry-level deals. They're going to be making $900,000. You can basically hold them for 3 years. Great. And then even when they get to their second contract, unless they turn to Kirill Kaprizov, they're probably not going to command a big bridge deal. that's where if you're going to trade draft picks, I'd actually would do this because those draft picks that you're going to take at 23, 26, and most likely in the 20s next season, you have 3 first-round picks over the next 2 drafts, you're not going to see those players for 3 or 5 years. So in my opinion, the time is now to do it because the players you're going to draft at 23, 26, 24 over the next 2 drafts, those guys aren't going to help you down the road right now. They're not going to help you immediately. They might help you down the road 5 years from now, but you're trying to win a cup right now. I would actually say it makes a lot of sense to do this trade because you have the cap space and the roster flexibility to do it.
I hate to kill.
Reckless speculation.
Trade talks.
Juicy rumors.
But, and I went to Benilde, so my math sucks, but Phil's pretty good at math. Can I run the math past you here? So, like, just from a math standpoint, as much as I love the reckless speculation lifestyle and live it on a daily basis, Jack Eichel's contract, okay? He has an annual $10 million cap hit through the 2025-26 season and a no-move clause, which means he has to approve any type of move, starting in 2022-23. Okay. Now, as Declan pointed out on the Emergency Judd's Hockey Show yesterday, and he's right, the Wild just freed up $10.3 million of cap space. So right now, it makes perfect sense. But Phil, help me out here. You went through the massive charges that the Wild is going to incur because Parise and Suter are gone in what amounts to, in football terms, dead money in 2022-23. So if you're going to sign Kaprizov, if you're going to keep Fiala, but let's just say you sign Kaprizov, which you're going to do, you have to do. After next year, the Eichel cap hit doesn't work in your world. Like, how are you going to pay? If you get him and you're on the hook for this contract, you would be so top heavy, you couldn't have a decent third or fourth line, which, by the way, in today's game is important. So I just don't see from, and again, I'm not the quickest math guy, I don't see from a math standpoint how this works.
So you'd have to hope for the cap to go, that the ESPN deal boosts the cap up enough to give you breathing room. And you'd have to essentially nail every young development player that comes into your pipeline. Right?
But as Declan said, you just traded to get him. You potentially traded the guys who you would be counting on to develop to become good players on the cheap. So, like, I hate to do this because I love the speculation, but I just don't see how it works. And by the way, too, that this is not accounting for the fact that if he does indeed, and we still don't know, but it hasn't happened yet. If he has the cervical disc replacement surgery that he wanted to have, he's not going to be set to play till the winter.
Yeah, that sounds aggressive. There's a lot of red flags there.
No hockey player has had it. And then the last one is we've all heard stories about Eichel in the room. Yeah. Do you really want to go back down that path?
So, I mean, is it possible then that some of these, because it's just now multiple times we've heard Wild could be making a deal for, is this Buffalo trying to drive up the number of perceived teams in the mix to drive his value up? Do you think Guerin is jettisoning for sure Suter and maybe both Parise and Suter in large part because they weren't great in the room, right? Mm-hmm. So if there were questions about Eichel coming in here in the room, injury-wise and contractually, that's almost too many hurdles for me to clear to trade all the assets It would be so much fun, and it would be very splashy. But it does feel a little aggressive. But I want to know, like, what are the other avenues to get a top-line center? What are the other avenues to cash in on, let's say, a 3 to 5 year window where you've got one of the best players in the NHL? Like, you're not. It's not like Kaprizov is 19 or 20 and he's going to be doing, like, he's in his mid-20s. He's going to be 24, right? So, like, you need to cash in the next 3 to 4 years, and your window starts now. It's already open.
But you just brought up the key point. Next 3 to 4 years, but in approximately 3 or 4 years, you might be crippled financially. So you really need to cash in the immediate window that you have right now, which is why I think they're going to make a trade for a kid like it's Christian Dvorak, I believe, of the Coyotes, who's a center who's under team control for quite some time on a pretty good contract. And that's the type of guy who I think could step in, and he would be a definite upgrade. He'd be your top center for now. There's been some conflicting reports. There's been conflicting feelings about how quickly Marco Rossi, their first-round pick who missed most of last year because he had COVID and then developed myocarditis. He, according to some, is going to be set to go pretty quickly in the National Hockey League. According to others, it's going to take a little bit of time. But if you think he's going to be set to go pretty quickly, let's say you go Dvorak, Ek, Rossi, well, now you're getting stronger there. But I think it's going to be a move at center like that where you definitely upgrade. You definitely get what you consider to be a steady player. But I don't know it's a player like Eichel who is going to come in and be, again, a dominating presence. And I don't see how you pay him starting in 2022-23 without crippling almost the rest of your franchise.
I have one more question on this for now. We have write that down predictions to get to here on this Wednesday. But, a lot of hockey players love to play golf. And for now, anyways, Parise and Suter have a little more time on their hands. I mean, they're sitting here just kind of waiting out their fate. I recommend that Golfer's Paradise in Southdale Center, PXG Minneapolis. They've got clubs for all different price ranges. The Gen 4 clubs have just rave reviews, the best performing clubs, I should say, that PXG's ever made. So if you're looking to pass some time as a hockey player with no official team right now, why don't you play a couple extra rounds of golf and stop in? Maybe get some of those experts at PXG Minneapolis to help get the right clubs for your game. PXG.com/Minneapolis. So if I would have told you guys back on July 4th, 2012, as exciting as this is amazing. 13-year contracts, biggest free agency splash in Minnesota sports history. And in 9 years from now, the Wild will have won 2 playoff series, and they will never have made it even to the conference finals. What would you have said on that day?
Go ahead, Dex.
I would be disappointed knowing what would happen in the next 9 years. But even with the thought of them not making the cup, I still would have done the deals. I still would have done the deals because they needed it to happen. The Wild were, in year 10, 11 going into that season when they signed Parise and Suter. And there was a stagnant, the lure of the state of hockey wore off. The lure of them coming here wore off. They were in an awkward transition stage where Gaborik was gone. No one was really there. Cal Clutterbuck, for God's sakes, was like the most marketable player on the Wild. That's an issue.
They were one of the most boring franchises in all of hockey, right?
They really were.
They were very nondescript. They played a defensive style under Jacques Lemaire, and yeah.
So saying it saved the franchise is probably a little bit of hyperbole, but they needed a signing like this to happen. It's unfortunate looking back on it that, they only have 2 playoff series wins, and I think too many Wild fans look at, but we made the playoffs 8 out of 10 years. Well, I'm done with that. I don't really care about that. I don't care that Parise comes in and scores some playoff goals. I want titles, damn it. And I think conference finals should be the at least bare minimum expectation for this team going into next season.
From a business standpoint, it was a genius move and will always be because of what you guys just talked about. They took a franchise that was nondescript and was still successful, obviously, but definitely was not selling out, definitely didn't have an identity, and they put butts in the seats. They sold jerseys galore, 11 and 20, and I actually did some research last night. I believe within the first week of the announcement that those two had signed, that they sold approximately 1,500 season tickets, which is in July pretty incredible. So from a financial standpoint, Craig Leopold, bravo. You probably made a lot more than you spent. You've spent a lot, I get that. But that's a lot of beers, that's a lot of jerseys, that's a lot of tickets to sell.
Yeah.
From a hockey standpoint, it's a bust, unfortunately. Now, I would still do it again, but I'm the same guy who would do Cousins again. And that's trending in the exact same way. I don't care if you're a Kirk stan or not. And you could be a Zach stan or a Ryan stan, and that's fine too. But from a sports standpoint, it's a bust. It is a bust. Legitimately, they made 7 playoff appearances in 9 years because the bubble doesn't count. That's a bunch of BS. Oh, we made the bubble playoffs. Bleep you. But you made 7 playoff appearances in 9 years, and Phil, you said it. You won 2 playoff series. That's all you did. I mean, this was supposed to be building something. The cap was supposed to go up. Some of this was out of your control, but nonetheless, I'm sorry. The day that they held the presser initially in July of 2012, Craig Leopold mentioned Stanley Cups, and he should have. Stanley Cups.
Not
Last
one,
time I checked.
not two,
Yep.
not three,
Exactly, but that was
not
that
five,
was,
not
that's-
6.
It was the hockey equivalent, right? It
was.
Like it was the
kinda
hockey
was.
equivalent of, oh
kinda
my
was.
God, these two guys just signed.
Yeah, Minnesota's
And-
basically the Miami if you're a hockey player. Like, you know, you
And you
live
didn't
on
get
frozen
close.
lakes and stuff. It's great.
Make no mistake, I do it again, but it's a bust.
It is like it's
From a hockey standpoint, not a
it's-
business
I would
standpoint.
say it made the franchise relevant. It made the franchise competitive. It was always fun. Like they were always there. They were always competing for a playoff spot. Even a couple of years they were competing among the best teams in the Western Conference. And so it's a little like the Vikings. Like the Vikings have been since 1998 basically. The Vikings have been pretty darn good. Even throughout the 90s before 98. They're always just 10-6, 11-5, all reliable. Even in their bad seasons, it's like they're still kind of flirting with the playoffs, but they're never in a spot, not never, but like rarely in a spot to actually win the championship. And so I would say the last 10 years of Wild hockey, the last 20 years of Twins baseball, and the last, well, you could almost make a case for most of the last 40 years of Vikings football, that it's all been sort of the same. Hey, they're pretty relevant. They're pretty good. Maybe they can make a magical run, and they never do. And if you would have told me 9 years ago, these guys are going to really only help with 2 playoff series wins, and that's going to be it. There's some front office blame to go around, like maybe not finding the right complementary pieces, maybe getting too obsessed with players in their early to mid-30s and signing those guys to extensions that they shouldn't have. And maybe they never found the right coach to make it all click or something, but I don't know. It's going to go down as a very underwhelming era of Wild hockey, and maybe Kaprizov can change that coming out of this.
I think that's a very fair thing. But the business standpoint, it worked. From a business standpoint, it worked really well. From a hockey standpoint, and I will never criticize teams for trying. They went for it. The Vikings did with Kirk. I mean,
Absolutely.
heck, the Twins did with Donaldson.
Yeah.
But you also have to. But you also then can't look back and be like, yeah, this is what we planned to be. To make the playoffs and do nothing in them. So.
Yep. So, all right. Well, if you want more, if you missed sort of the immediate breaking news reaction as this came down yesterday, you can find that on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed, Judd's Hockey Show. And Billy Guerin will join you guys today. And so people can find that too. Score North YouTube channel, Mackey and Judd podcast feed, scorenorth.com is the best place to find everything we do. We're going to take a deep breath, collect ourselves, and come back with some write that down predictions and an accountability session.